Yo, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Good to see you again, and I know it's been a while. I haven't really uploaded a lot of videos this past week. I've had a lot going on between work. I get married in November, so, just kind of doing some of the small stuff and like sending out invitations and getting all that stuff ready. But to be fair, I really haven't been doing the most. My fiance has actually been the best part of my life, and she's really been taking the lead position on planning out a lot of the stuff. But to be fair, I said that we could get married in a barn and I'd be okay with it. But we both want to have our perfect day, so that's also been quite a lot. But the past few weeks, or actually the past week, I've been really practicing a lot of this game, and I've been trying to get better. And whether that's through multiple reps or just like getting some words of advice from fantastic players. So massive shout out to Fee Win, to Impact on Fire, as well as Jonas Abraham. I think that these guys have given me not only amazing games to play up against them, but they've been giving me some great advice, through some of the matches and different situations. So really can't say thank you enough to those guys. I feel like I've put in a lot of time that this deck list right here feels fantastic. Unfortunately, I make mistakes here or there, and that's why I don't think that my placements have necessarily been bad per se, but they haven't been what I want. I have only lost matches, unfortunately, because of my own mistakes. Every match that I played was winnable except for one, but that's a video for another day. That's going to be a very interesting video. But yeah, except for one, every match that I lost because of my own misplay. And it's unfortunate. It happens. But at the same time, that's why I've been practicing. I'm trying to get better. But Gecko Moria, ladies and gentlemen, is my leader of choice for a lot of the competitive matches I've been playing in. I'm going to be uploading a lot of key matches that I played in the past 3 Treasure Cups. I recorded every single one of my videos, as well as streamed it all on Twitch. So if you guys haven't followed my Twitch channel, I would recommend it. I do try and stream every night. Doesn't always work, but usually speaking, I'm live every night. And yeah, I've been absolutely loving this leader. I grinded all the way up to the top 5 right now of the ranked OP Sim leaderboards, and I feel very good into pretty much every matchup except for Black Yellow Luffy. That's just a terrible matchup, but I feel very good into the vast majority of matchups. And I kind of wanted to go over some of the some of the important parts of this deck and kind of like how it works. But I don't think that by any means that I have like the most unique deck list, but I do have some some slightly unique ratios when it comes to certain cards, and I'll explain why. But first I want to go over just the easy cards that these are mandatory. You got to have them at these ratios. If you don't, you're crazy. But obviously for Sindri, for Perona, for Absalom, for Hogbacks, for Gecko Morias, and 4 Surus. So before I continue, this is just a must. These cards have to be at 4. It's essentially like the engine of your deck, how it runs. And the rest of the cards I would say are sort of musts, but you can tinker with them a little bit. But these are just like, you can't change this. This is 4 of each. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Hogback obviously being one of the best cards to be able to get back a lot of the 2K counters, as well as pick up your Gecko Morias. This card is invaluable in so many matchups, and it allows you to apply pressure, but at the same time defend your board the turn after. So extremely important card. I cannot say enough about this. I think at the very beginning of this meta, I super undervalued this, and I actually even cut it to 3 at one point, which was the most insane thing I've ever done. Yeah, this card is probably out of well, Moria's obviously like the GOAT, but I would say out of like your main staple thriller bar cards, this is probably one of the most important, if not the most important card. Sindri, just being able to put cards into your trash and set up everything that you need for the rest of the game. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And the 2K counter itself, this is really the engine of the deck, so just having that at 4 is a must. Perona is like, it's just fantastic. So many uses, whether it's the -3 or it's the trash one from hand. This is usually your best turn 2 play in almost every matchup. Not every single one, but almost every matchup. Just having this card really kind of presents your opponent with 2 problems. 1, how are they going to deal with it on the board? And 2, deciding what card to trash after you play it. So extremely important. Obviously, we've got Absalom. This is like, this card and I have a hate-love relationship. I absolutely love it when I see it, and I hate it when I don't. It's basically like a must-see at least once in most matches. Into particular matches such as Sakazuki as well as RP Law, you need to see multiple of this. If you're not at least seeing 2 in those matchups, you're probably done for. Just because they bottom deck a lot of your cards. And in RP Law, I'm of the mindset that if I don't see 3 of these, it's probably going to be a very tough game. Which does make the RP Law matchup a little wonky sometimes. I do think that it's Gecko favored, but we'll get into the matchups later. Yeah, so Absalom, hate, love it. It's got some, we've got some relationship issues. Suru at 4, yet again, must have. It's that reduction that you need to KO, some pesky cards on board. It's the 1 cost that's playable off of Gecko Moria from trash. It is just fantastic. The 2K counter as well. Searchable from brand new. I mean, Suru just fits in the deck extremely well. Obviously, Gecko Moria, like one of the most maybe more expensive cards in the deck list, but it is, I mean, this card's broken. It's busted. Being able to play for 8 Dawn, a 14 Dawn play, essentially, a 4 cost and a 2 cost, as well as an 8 9K. It is just broken. This card makes 0 sense sometimes. But it also can just be a really weird card in your hand during certain moments and certain matchups. I would say like 90% of the time, this is the card that I want to draw into. But there's that 10% where I'm like, oh God, why? Why did I draw into that? Of all the cards, I needed anything else. And it's a very unique scenario, but I think with playing this deck a lot, you do start to realize some of those moments. But those are just the key cards you have to have in the deck. And now we're going to go into like some ratios that I think are slightly interchangeable, but for the most part, I do think that just in the current meta, these need to stay the way they are. 4 Great Eruptions. 4 Great Eruptions is mostly because of the fact that you're playing up against decks like RP Law, playing up against Sakazuki, where they have 4 cost Kuzan. RP Law, I was initially running Great Eruption at 3 and Ice Age at 4. I realized that you end up losing that matchup because of lack of cards in hand more often than not. And this kind of alleviates that. It allows you to at least recycle, reduce something by 2, and, potentially draw into a counter card. It's also a very free cycle, which is great. You know, sometimes in particular matchups like Yamato, if I am going first and or even second, and I don't have brand new or Sindri off of my mulligan or something like that, you know, this is a free card cycle to try and get some counter power in my hand. There aren't too many 4 costs in the Yamato matchup that you really need to deal with or be weary of. So I don't really need to save this as much. And that's, you know, this is just like, it's free cycle, but it's also that pressure into a lot of the matchups. I think that 4 is correct right now, just because of the current meta. Do I think there's a world where you could run 3? Sure. I personally prefer it at 4, and that's why I run Ice Age at 3. Initially, I had Ice Age at 4 because it was just really tough to deal with, you know, the mirror matchup, as well as Sakazuki dropping 8 cost Moria. This was kind of the answer to that. But the more that I played into it, I realized that in those matchups, a lot of times I'm actually not going for the Moria KO unless I'm at 10 Dawn and I just have the perfect Great Eruption Ice Age combo or 2 double Ice Age combo to use a Moria to KO 2 characters off their board with a Lucci play. But I think Ice Age has felt really nice at 3. Sometimes it can be the biggest brick in hand, but more often than not, it's very useful. It helps get rid of those pesky 5 costs as well. There's 5 cost cards that are really annoying to deal with, and Great Eruption doesn't get you there, with you only being able to KO 2 costs or less with Absalom and Lucci. So I think Ice Age is just fantastic. It gets rid of the 7 costs, the 5 costs. It can help get rid of those 8, 9s, depending on the situation. But yeah, this is the ratio that I believe feels very, very good for Moria on this. And now, one of the most important cards in the current meta, Sabo. This was a really tough call for me. I actually run this card at 3 right now. I do believe that Sabo felt really, really nice at 4, but I was overvaluing it because of a particular matchup, Katakuri. So before EB01, Katakuri was just running rampant, and now it's kind of fallen off a little bit because of the introduction of RP Law. Enel has been getting some more aggressive boosts with the 5 cost Ace from starter deck 13. So I actually brought this back down to 3 right now. It feels good, but it also has its moments where I do wish I had it at 4, but you do have to concede a little bit in this deck in order to find space for other cards. I think that Sabo is like, it's just amazing in the mirror matchup. This card literally wins you the mirror matchup. It's fantastic into Enel. Enel hates this card. What was it? Uta, I believe it's Uta that this card also feels really good. I do enjoy having just like something that I can dedicate just 1 Dawn to swing for 7, but this card still crushes the Katakuri matchup. Not having it at 4 does make the Katakuri matchup maybe a little bit more difficult, because 4 is just so much more consistent to draw into and to see. But if you're able to steal first off of Katakuri and get this down on turn 3, oh my gosh, it's pretty much a wrap. Like, it's pretty much a wrap from there. Yeah, Sabo is just incredible, and also being able to filter out the cards that I don't need or set up my trash for a Moria play the turn after, phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Sabo on turn 4 when you're going second is just incredible. It sounds like you would want to go turn 4 a Moria play, but depending on the events I have in hand, whether I have Great Eruption and Ice Age, or if I have one or the other, I can actually take that turn to maybe bring a Hog back from trash using Leader Effect, which is only 3 Dawn, and then playing a Sabo to protect my entire board from, let's say, a Moria from my opponent, or you know, some other board wipe mechanic if I'm playing against a deck like that. And then I can go the Moria the turn after with the 2 extra Dawn for some events, or a Suru, you know, something to help maybe alleviate some of the pressure. And I mean, just the blocker allowing you to, you know, block and then give a 2k for a lot of 7k swings is incredible. I love this into the new gate matchup as well. It feels really great. Sabo is just, it's, you know, it's just an amazing card. There's a reason why the price has gone up so much. Lucci. So Lucci is something that I actually wanted to run at 4 after playing up against RP Law quite a bit, because that matchup kind of sucks if you don't see your removal cards. And yeah, Lucci's like insane. It's absolutely insane against RP Law. But if I'm lucky enough, through my first Sindri, I can, if I'm lucky enough, I can usually get like a Sindri play and see 1 Rob Lucci in my trash off the first 5. And that is always a great start, because I like to have 1 in trash for my Gecko Moria. Sometimes it does feel sticky in hand to try and get rid of, but it is also just a 4-cost 6k, which is amazing. So like if you're going first, you don't always have this amazing 7 Dawn play. More often than not, you don't have a bad play, but occasionally this will be like your only 4-cost in hand that you can play, and then you have your 3 Dawn to work with leader ability. Well, I've learned that, you know, a lot of times, you know, people are overvaluing Perona for the card trash, but you can actually just use this for the -3 on that turn. Use the Rob Lucci, potentially get off like a Searcher and a 4-cost off their board or something of the sorts. And it feels very powerful. So I do like this at 3. Sometimes RP Law makes you regret not having it at 4, but I still think that that matchup is pretty, well, I shouldn't say pretty favored. It's favored if you see your your KO cards, but otherwise it can be a pretty tricky matchup, I won't lie. And now, brand new. Brand new is another card that I have a very love-hate relationship with. I hate this card and I love it for multiple reasons. If I'm not mistaken, I'm going to have to go back through and count very shortly, but I believe there are 16 or 17 hits in this deck list for brand new. When I did have more Navy cards, I had brand new at 4, which I think is correct. I think you should base this off of how many potential hits it does have. But even with that in mind, brand new is extremely useful for just getting cards into trash. Even if it whiffs, you got 3 cards into trash, which sets up your leader effect, sets up, you know, trashing cards for Hogback, Absalom, Lucci, all kinds of stuff. So as much as I do hate whiffing with brand new, occasionally, you know, you just kind of have to go, I needed it anyways. It's okay. But yeah, brand new is amazing. I know some people ask me quite often about, in my chat at least, about why not Inupe, because you can cycle 2 cards. Well, it's not 3 to go to trash. That's one big difference. 2 is that you can't specifically search out your events. Your events are like so necessary to find in certain matchups, and they're so important in seeing like for certain turns. But brand new just allows you to do that, so it's kind of like the best of both worlds. Unfortunately, though, he does do me dirty sometimes, which not much you can do about that. He's just a little rough. And then we have 2 Helmeppos. Helmeppo is beyond important in this deck, but it is also not as amazing as many people think it is. It is really great for a Gecko Moria play. It's sometimes even playable from hand, depending on the situation, but it's more of like a last-ditch effort if I don't have Great Eruption, Ice Age, Suru, some Perona play of the nature. But Helmeppo, it gets there. It gets there. It's just the extra -1 that you need for certain situations. And I used to run this at 3 because I felt like I needed to see it every single time. But the more that I played the deck, the more that I understood you know, what each card was really meaning to do, I realized that the third one was just not necessary whatsoever. It does feel kind of bad when you don't see it, but more often than not, your Sindri, your Brand New, your Sabo, your milling 2 through leader effect, they're going to get you there to where this is in trash. And if it's not, it's in hand, which is a very easy counter card. I counter out, call it a day, love to see it. It's in trash, setting it up for the Lucci play. That is something that's been very important, though, is recognizing when I need to get those cards into trash for the turn after. You know, every time that I'm pitching something from hand to counter out, I'm thinking to myself, what is most important for my next turn? I need to, sometimes I don't want to give up a 2K, but I'm like, I need a Suru in trash. I have to. Sometimes you want to give a 2K for a 6K swing, but you realize that you need Helmeppo and you need Absalom in trash, but they're in hand. So you're given those two 1K counters over just a 2K in order to set up that trash for a great play the following turn. So Helmeppo, I think this card is fantastic at 2. It feels good. I see it more often than not. And when I don't, it doesn't feel like it's a detriment. It just feels like there are random situations or games where I'm like, man, I really wish I saw a Helmeppo, but I'm not going to bring it up to 3 just for that. You know, there's many ways to work around not having it in trash. And I am going to slowly move these away real fast. We're going to get into the last cards of the deck, and these are the most interesting ones in my opinion for the ratios that I run. So we've got Rebecca. At 3. Initially, I was running Borsellino. I think Borsellino is great, and when I was running Borsellino, that's when I had Brand New at 4, because I had more Navy hits, and I like Borsellino. I don't have any problems against it, or, you know, it does its job. It's great in the mirror matchup, but the more that I played Borsellino, it felt as though that card is pretty much only meant for the mirror matchup or for Katakuri. And even still then, it just gets Amarud and you don't feel great. You can apply pressure with that card at least, which is nice. But the reason why I choose Rebecca over Borsellino right now is because this card allows you to get back one of your 2K counters. It allows you to stay healthy. Your deck is constantly trashing cards because of your leader effect, but being able to get multiple cards back through Rebecca, through Hogback, you know, is just, it's invaluable. So this allows you to stay healthy on hand size, but also just be really annoying. Like, this is such an annoying card. When your opponent's looking at it, they're like, I want to swing into, you know, your rested character for 7. And you're like, oh, well, I don't even have to give you the 2K that I just brought back. I can just block with this. And now I can bring it back with Moria the following turn, and I can just keep recycling my Rebeccas and just gain more and more cards over and over and over again. If there's times where your Gecko Moria, your 8-cost Moria, is you have to decide between 2 things. You're going either value or you're going for removal. And so when you're going value, you kind of have like a couple of different options. You have Rebecca into like Brand New. You have Hogback into Brand New, or and I'm going to be getting to that card soon, Kuzan into Brand New. And if you're going for the KO, obviously you're going for some sort of like Suru or Helmeppo into a Lucci or Absalom. Yeah, and I just think this card is really nice, being able to add 2Ks back. It feels very crisp. And also, you get to add back Hinas occasionally. Hina, I was originally running at 3. This is one of those ratios that I personally like 2, but I totally understand why people run 3. This card is amazing on that even curve. You know, more games, or more often than not, in many of your matches, you want to take first. But there are certain matches that you want second. Like, you want second into Sakazuki. If you're able to play this down and use leader effect on your 6th on turn, you have 2 bodies on the board and potentially removed something, potentially got something from a card from their hand, or added another card back from your grave using Hogback. It is a power play. If you can use Hina into Absalom as well, it's a fantastic answer to 5-cost cards that were played the turn before on your opponent's odd curve. So Hina is amazing. However, it does feel like a brick sometimes. More often than not, obviously I want to play the card, but it's tough to get. It's tough that if you don't see it at the right times, it can feel kind of useless. But the beauty of that is that you have answers to that situation. You can pitch it off of leader effect if it's too late in the game. You can pitch it using Sabo, draw 2, trash 2. There's multiple ways to cycle the card out of the hand. I personally liked it at 3. I feel fine with it at 2. So I've been running this at 2 and Rebecca at 3. This is just a 1k counter. I don't want to have too many non-counter cards in the list, especially in a red-purple law-dominated meta right now. It feels as though, well, I shouldn't say dominated, but they've been winning. They've been doing really well. I think they've won like 2 events now, which is dope. Yeah, so I like Hina at 2. Feels good. Wouldn't personally change it to 3 again. I think that just it feels like the sweet spot. And also, the reason why I had this at 2 was because I cut 1 for an extra Kuzan. I wasn't running Kuzan at first, and then I started running 2, and then for some reason I didn't have a great build, and I didn't like Kuzan anymore, so I cut it completely. And now I'm back to 2 again. I just realized like how influential this card is in so many matchups and how annoying it is for your opponent to deal with, and just the value that it gets. It's usually speaking, you know, people, a lot of people that I've seen have unfortunately not realized like what its true purpose is. There's certain matchups where this card is actually meant to be kept on the board, and such as Enel, right? If you can keep this card on the board against Enel, it's pretty much game over. Enel does not stand a chance. But if you, and as well as Gecko Moria, this is actually an insane card against Gecko Moria, it just kind of wins matchups. But it's removable. It's, you know, it can be done. But Enel kind of struggles a little bit more than Gecko on that. However, a lot of the times, just playing this card for 4, I get to draw 1. So I basically just played it with replacing itself. And now, more often than not, your opponent, to answer this, has to give you 2 cards from hand. Usually. Not always, but usually. And so, if that's the case, I mean, you're getting 2 out of their hand for 1 that you just drew a free card for. I mean, it is unbelievable. And the value that you can get off this, if you are very early in applying pressure to your opponents, and you can play this into like a Sakazuki, having them at 1 life, 2 life, on your Gecko Moria turn, just bring this back from the grave, they are sweating. They're like, I have to deal with this and a Moria, but I have to prioritize this because I know that no matter what I play for the rest of the game, that will essentially remove it. It will lower the cost within range, and then it's getting popped by Lucci or Absalom. So this card is just so amazing. I love it at 2. I can see this at 1. I ran it at 1 for my top 32 run with Gecko, and I enjoyed it. But I think that personally, in the current EB01 meta, I'm really enjoying it at 2. And now the last card of the deck is 1 of 6-cost Sakazuki. This is insane. I cannot tell you how many games this has won me and how annoying this is in the current meta right now. So for 6 cost, you can on play trash 1 card from hand, KO one of your opponent's 5 costs or less. It answers so many problems. I tried running it at 2. I didn't hate it. However, I was cutting other cards that I thought were more important. So just having this at 1, you don't need to see it. You don't have to see this. Like, I'm not mulliganing it. Well, it depends on the matchup. But like, I'm usually not going to like hard search out this card. It is it's really just in here for particular turns, right? And drawing into it late, I'm probably just gonna pitch it. Not always, but more often than not. I put this in here because I honestly, as much as RP Law isn't that bad of a matchup for Gecko, it's really annoying if you don't see your removal cards. And it's also really annoying that pretty much every card in your deck besides 8-cost Moria is just very easily removable with a simple Gordon use leader effect. This card requires 2 Gordons, or it requires a Gordon and a 4-cost promo Law. So you're still getting a lot out of your opponent in order for them to get rid of this card. It is very sticky, a 7k swing every single turn as well. That's 2 cards out of hand or a life, guaranteed, or a blocker, guaranteed. It is extremely annoying for anyone to deal with. To be fair, I do think that it's not that hard for it's not that hard for Moria or for Sakazuki to deal with. So in those matchups, I really don't care about this card. I'll put it down like if I have nothing else, but normally I would try and do a kind of a better play with Hina and Absalom, or like Hina Hogback or something like that. But this answers all of your 5-cost problems. 5-cost characters tend to be the bane of this deck's existence. So when your opponent plays down Gadatsu and pops one of your 4-cost, or RP Law plays down 5-cost Kid or 5-cost Queen for, you know, a blocker, but also just value from their leader effect, this is the answer. This does it, and it forces your opponent into a really weird spot where the next turn they have to dedicate usually either 2 Dawn or 5 Dawn to try and get rid of this, and that's not happening. If they do, you're just kind of ahead. You ended up getting rid of one of their annoying cards, and you force them to get rid of probably all their removal for the rest of the game, and then you can just comfortably play cards to the field and start, you know, playing into your opponent's matchup, you know, just as smoothly as you wanted to in the first place. But that is it for the ratios on the deck. I really enjoy them. I'm super happy with how this deck plays. To give you guys a little bit of a kind of an opinion on some of the matchups, I think that this deck does well into basically every single matchup except for Black Yellow Luffy, and I do think that Sakazuki kind of comes down to the dice roll, as well as are you able to apply enough pressure early that they are forced to play defensively and have to have the exact removal for a lot of the annoying stuff on your board. If you're able to play aggressively enough as Gecko Moria in that matchup and develop somewhat of a board, because most of it will get removed from, you know, plays on curve, you're going to be looking very good. You're going to be looking very good. Sakazuki is very winnable. It's actually, most Saka players that I've played up against, they don't want to play against Gecko Moria because they know that it's a very tricky matchup. Gecko has a lot of plays that can just be extremely annoying for Saka, and especially if Saka doesn't see, you know, the optimal cards on particular turns, it becomes very annoying. But yeah, I would say arguably your worst matchups are Black Yellow Luffy. Next is, and this one's a weird one, the next, like, I would say quote unquote bad matchup, it's not a bad matchup by any means, is I would say a weird matchup is Uta. Uta is actually a very weird match for this deck list. The reason why is because you almost have to see Ice Age in that matchup. If you don't, it's going to be very, very, very tricky dealing with your opponent's 8-cost Kid. It's rather difficult when, you know, you don't have Ice Age and they play down 8-cost Kid and you're sitting there looking like a fool, like, what do I do? Do I have a Moria on board? Sure, I can swing like 10 and then swing big with leader, and then if you don't get rid of it that turn, it's pretty much game over. It's a wrap. They can set up 2 more blockers the following turn, attack you with everything on board, and or they could just do the, you know, attack with Kid. It's now got a Dawn. It's my magnet for the following turn, and now I just hit you with a double I'm invincible. You don't have enough counter. You lose. It's a really weird matchup. I think that it's very winnable for Moria, but not seeing Ice Age does make it really weird. The one thing that I learned about playing against Uta as well is that more often than not, I was trying to prioritize removing their board early. Don't do that. Just let them have their board. Don't swing too much with your characters until you're absolutely ready to go for, you know, a really big swing. I'm trying to take first in that matchup, and I want to get them to, when they get to 8 Dawn, right? I'm going for like the blockers on their board, and I'm swinging like 5s at their life over and over and over again, getting as much like, or to their board, depending on how much life they have. You're not really trying to give Uta as many cards as possible, because as soon as they put down 8-cost Kid, if they just have a ton to defend it, it's just a wrap. They win. GG. So I do find that one to be a bit of a weird matchup. Like I said, it's very winnable. It's just annoying that if you don't see Ice Age, it becomes a much harder game than it previously was meant to be. RP Law is a weird matchup. Yet again, I think it's favored in Gecko's favor by a lot, but well, I shouldn't say by a lot. I think it is slightly favored. I shouldn't say by a lot, because what makes or breaks that matchup is seeing your removal cards. If you don't see them, it's pretty much over. I think I've won 1 RP Law game where I didn't see more than like 1 Absalom, and I saw no Luchis. I won 1. And I think it was just because I saw an incredible amount of 2K counters and hogbacks, and I was able to just keep cycling hogback over and over again. Even though they got bottom decked, I saw all 4, so I just kept playing them and getting more 2Ks and developing a board that eventually could go for it. But that's a tricky one. I would say that Enel feels really good with this deck, but there's one variant that Jackson Huang keeps beating me with, and it's annoying. That is, it's a lot of the rush cards running the 5-cost aces, the 7-cost Enels. It becomes a lot to deal with board and maintaining life at the same time. So that's a tricky one, but I still think that Enel is very favored for Moria. I also think that Jackson's just a really good player, so he probably just played much better than me. But that's kind of the breakdown I wanted to give, guys. I think this deck is very good into Katakuri as well. You know, Katakuri, though, just sometimes feels like it can't be beaten because they see insane triggers. That's just the name of the game, unfortunately, when playing against yellow. So not really much you can do there. Don't beat yourself up on it. I do, but like, don't be me. And I know this was a bit of a long video, but I wanted to give some of my thoughts and ideas that I've put a lot of time into over the past 2 weeks of playing this deck, and I'm genuinely happy with how I played, but bummed out about some of the mistakes I made. But that's the beauty of it, is I learned, gonna be better from it, and excited to play in some of the regionals in June. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts though, guys. Let me know as always, and I appreciate y'all. I'll catch you in the next one. All right, peace.